you came here with a profound spiritual gift. Your sensitivity is a gift that was handed to you from the moment you were born, and it's a gift that is meant to be cherished. Hello and welcome back to Remember Why You're Here, a podcast for seekers and sensitives where you can relax, receive, reconnect to yourself, and remember the most important thing of all, why you're here. I'm Asia Suler, author, earth intuitive, teacher, and today I'm going to be answering your questions about sensitivity. I released a podcast called What It Actually Means to Be Sensitive, and we talked about the deeper layers of sensitivity, what this actually means on a soul level, on a level of spirit, on a much deeper even nervous system level than what you've probably been handed. And I put out this call for your questions about sensitivity, and I got some really amazing ones, both over on my voicemail and via email. And so I'm really excited to dive into these questions today. If you identify as a sensitive, an empath, or an HSP, then this episode is absolutely for you. And it was so nourishing to dive into this material as I get ready to teach Earth Angel School in just a couple weeks. I'm so excited about this 11-week program. This program was specifically designed for sensitive people. It is a spiritual school that is here to help you understand yourself as a sensitive person somatically, spiritually, intuitively. The school was designed to help you redefine the way in which you see yourself, to not just see yourself as a sensitive or even an empath, but to understand that you are an earth angel, that you came here with a really profound and big mission. And this school is arising out of my entire lifetime of learning what it means to be sensitive, how to work with the superpowers of sensitivity to really step into my gifts in this lifetime. And so the school is this combination of somatic healing, spiritual fluency, earth magic, and I just couldn't be more excited to get started. The early bird pricing ends on Monday, April 14th. So if you're listening to this before then and you're interested, definitely go check that out at asiasuler.com/earthangelschool. So this topic of sensitivity is as deep as sensitives themselves, which is very, very deep. So let's go ahead and get into it. This first question was submitted by several different people, and it's one that I think is just so important to talk about, because just by talking about it, we can actually undo or start to unravel one of the things that is most challenging or most harmful for sensitive people. Okay, so here's the question. What is sensitivity versus what is trauma? So this question was submitted by a handful of folks who really had this career for themselves. Like, am I sensitive, or have I experienced trauma? Is high sensitivity a thing, or is it really just the byproduct of living in a time in which trauma is very prevalent in our experience? So I just want to take a moment and, with my heart, reach out to everyone who submitted this question or is just wondering about this question inside of themselves. And I want to say that I feel very passionate about answering this question because it really hits sensitives in such a tender spot. You know, we're always, as sensitives, we're always wondering, is there something wrong with me? Is this normal, or is there something just wrong with me? Why can't I function the way other people function? Why is this so much harder for me? So when this question comes up, that is the first thing that I'm feeling and wanting to respond to, is that it's pointing right back towards one of these cycles, these loops that we get in as sensitive people. And it's important that we look at it and we start to unravel it, because within this is really the understanding of who we are and the utter naturalness of who we are. So I just wanted to start out by saying, in no uncertain terms, that trauma and high sensitivity are two different things. So there's over 20 years of research to show that sensitivity or high sensitivity is a biological trait that you were born this way with a nervous system that is simply more sensitive, more attuned to subtleties, more open to sensory input. Your nervous system, your brain, you were born this way. And in fact, not only were you born this way, but about 20% of the population was too. And that percentage remains consistent over 100 different species. So we know that this is not just trauma, that people are born with this kind of neurodivergence. So this feels really important to me to clarify. It's like a clarion call of really reclaiming your naturalness, of reclaiming the inherent goodness of this specific variety of neurodiversity. This is not the result of something that is wrong with you. It is something that is inherently right about you. It's a gift that you were born with. Now, I understand though why people ask this question, and there are some complexities to it that I want to get into that will hopefully help you understand why we even asked this question to begin with. So let's talk a little bit about why this might be confusing, why this might be coming up. Well, one of the byproducts of trauma is what's called hypervigilance, this sort of hyper-attuned focus on your environment, the sort of intense focus on and orientation towards perceiving threat or danger. Now, in contrast to this, or you could say in some similar tones, sensitive people are also more aware of their environments, more sensitive to their environments. Sensitive people track and take in more detail. We know this to be a fact. And so while hypervigilance is one thing, the kind of attunement that sensitive people can have to their environment and were biologically designed to have for their environment are two different things. So within evolution, sensitive people would have been designed to be taking in a plethora of sensory information because they have the ability to process it deeply and notice and respond to and help other people orient to more subtle patterns. So this doesn't just mean orienting towards potential threats. This also means orienting towards potential boons, potential blessings, just potential in general. So let's use cats as an example here. When a cat has been traumatized, which you've probably seen at some point in your life, or maybe you've seen videos of this, there's like a jumpiness, there's this wide dilated eyes, there's like hyper focus, looking at one thing in the environment, but then being almost scared to turn their head to look at something else. Now, that's an example of hypervigilance. That's a trauma response. Now, by contrast, think about a cat, maybe even a big cat. Cats are so beautifully sensitive, right? Think about a cat tracking in their environment. They're moving their head back and forth. They're able to hone in on details. They're taking it all in. And yes, they're still very, very sensitive, and they're probably noticing a lot more than a being that wasn't designed to track their environment with that much subtlety. But there's a settledness to it. There's a empowerment to it. There's a peace to it. And as sensitive people, that's how we are meant to function in our environments. Now, of course, many of us are coming in with challenge or trauma. Many of us are maybe going in and out of states of hypervigilance at times if we have experienced trauma. But I want you to just feel somatically in your body that sense of being like a big cat that can look around, free to move their head, free to hone in on all these subtle details as they expertly track their environment and they fluidly and gracefully process everything that they're seeing and respond. That is the gift of a highly sensitive nervous system. Now, sensitives do have a very active amygdala. The amygdala is a very ancient part of our brain that is intimately involved with our emotions and is really tied into what we think of our survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And so one of the things that we see with trauma is that there can be a overactive amygdala in the aftermath and the experience of having trauma. And so, yes, sensitive people, we do have a more active amygdala. And this is seen in the depth of our emotion, that we tend to be highly emotional beings, that we feel things really deeply. But just because we have more sensitivity in one part of our brain doesn't mean that that's there because we've been traumatized. That sensitivity is part of the attunement that we're born with. It's part of the specialized gifts, the literal frequency that we are tuned into. And it can be a really big blessing. This is part of what makes it possible for us to feel things deeply, to be so attuned in an almost primal way to our environment. With this being the case and with the specific setup that we as sensitives come into this lifetime with, there is some evidence that sensitive people might be more sensitive or susceptible to trauma. And this is pretty simple or easy to understand if you just break it down. If you are processing more details, if you take in more sensory information, if you are more open to the world, then it's likely, right, that certain charges that people will feel that might just sort of flow on through them might be more deeply felt by you, that you are impacted more deeply by things than other people are. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, right? But let's go back to thinking about the definition of what trauma is. Trauma, if you just sort of strip away all the layers, is just a charge that's too big to be fully felt in the moment. Something happens and the charge of that moment is just too big for you to process in that moment. And so it's stored in the body, and that process of storing it and it living in your body is called trauma. So if as sensitive people, we feel more, we experience more, we take in more, then it makes sense that if we have a big impact in our life, that charge is going to feel louder, bigger, deeper, wider. So yes, we can be more negatively impacted by negative stimuli. And yet, what I've seen with sensitive people is that we have the ability to do some incredible metabolic work, not only within ourselves, but within the collective, specifically because we have such a capacity to process things deeply. And so we have the ability to have a big charge come our way, have to process the extra amplitude of bigness that it might be because of the way in which our nervous system receives things. But we go so deep in the processing of that we can come out the other side with an even deeper understanding of what it means to be human, of what it means to be alive, and the ability to help people in really profound ways move through what they have experienced. Ultimately, why I was most passionate about speaking to this question is that it really circles back around to this Achilles heel that we sensitives have, which is this looping thought, there's something wrong with me. And what I'm seeing more of the time is that thought is actually more impactful in the life of a sensitive and more challenging than the trauma that they are healing from. So this thought, this one that's on loop, this does often come from chronic misattunement. So a lot of us sensitives did not get the kind of attunement that we needed from our caregivers when we were young. And you could have had amazing parents, amazing caregivers, but if they aren't sensitive themselves, then it was probably really hard for them to attune to the complexities of what you needed, your depths, the specificity of being a sensitive person. So many sensitive people do have this history of misattunement. And so from a really young age, part of you probably wondered, is there something wrong with me? Like I didn't react to that like my sister did. Is there something wrong with me? The way that I asked my parent for that did not go over well. Is there something wrong with me? All my friends could watch that movie, but for me, this gave me nightmares for a month. Is there something wrong with me? And there's this loop of, is there something wrong with me, creates this constant loop of stress in our body, this loop of chronic stress, anxiety, depression, chronic pain. And so this question or this sort of thorn that we're looping around all the time is the thing that I just want to direct our hearts to right now and say in an unequivocal manner that there is nothing wrong with you. that you carry a gift, a very profound gift for this collective. And in many ways, one of the biggest things that is standing in your way is just this thought that there is something wrong with you, when in reality, there is nothing wrong with you whatsoever. And this is a big part of the reason why I'm so passionate about rebranding sensitives as earth angels. Because you didn't just come here to be a shrinking violet, to, feel like you're fragile or defective. You came here with a profound spiritual gift. And this gift is one that's been downloaded into your body, into your nervous system, into your psyche, and that is here to help you expand and open into windows of possibility that maybe other people can't even perceive. And I really believe that sensitive people come in equipped for their mission in this world. There's nothing about you that was created in any kind of misalignment. You came in with your specific mission and your specific nervous system, psyche, and setup in order to accomplish that mission. And let's be real, right? This world is intense. And if we're talking about charges, just the charge of arriving here on this planet is a lot. And so however you wrap your head around this, what I want you to know and what I want you to come back to is that your sensitivity is not a result of your defectiveness. It's not something that happened to you. It's not something that you can change. It's not something that is a sign of maladaptation. Your sensitivity is a gift. And in many ways, when sensitives experience and heal from trauma, we're brought even deeper into that gift. Caroline Casey calls trauma our beautiful, dangerous assignment. And so there's also this layer in which it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for anyone, really, to ask the question, like, is this innately me, or is this my trauma? And this can be helpful when we're starting to differentiate and we're starting to reclaim ourselves again. But at the end of the day, when we loop on this concept or idea that somehow if things would just be different, I would be different, it takes us away from who we really are. And the fact that all these layers in our life make up the tapestry of who we are. It's almost like asking yourself, well, who would I be if I didn't have age spots or wrinkles? It's erasing part of your identity, part of your selfhood, like this incredible tapestry that you've built in this lifetime of you. And so what I'd love to direct your attention towards instead is the incredible power of your resiliency, of the profound specialness of the gifts that you carry, and this really acute awareness and knowledge of the fact that your sensitivity is a gift that was handed to you from the moment you were born, and it's a gift that is meant to be cherished. So this next question comes from one of our amazing listeners, Stephanie, who left me such an incredible voice message. The message was so moving, and the way Stephanie phrased this question was so profound that I thought I would just play the clip here.
Hi, Asia. My name is Stephanie. I just listened to your latest episode, your podcast on sensitive people today. And oh my gosh, talk about being sensitive. I'm in tears over here. One of the things that I would love to hear you talk about more is being in freeze mode, and maybe if that's a result of being a sensitive person or a result of trauma, because it is so overwhelming.
So this is such a big question. How do we as sensitives get out of overwhelm or freeze mode? A mode that, frankly, we probably find ourselves in a lot because this world is overwhelming. Well, the first thing I want to say is just orient you to the reality of freeze mode. Freeze is one of the survival modes that we can go into. So there's fight, there's flight, there's fawn, and then there's freeze. And I find fawn and freeze to be the two places that sensitives just immediately go to. It's like we almost bypass fight or flight and we go right to fawn or freeze. Fawning is the impetus, the trauma response of responding by trying to appease someone else or look like you're appeasing someone else in order to keep yourself safe, in order to reduce threat. So this could show up like people pleasing. Very, very common. Freeze is the other most common response. And why I want to orient you to this and just the profundity of the freeze response is this. When we look at animals in nature, look at an antelope being chased by a lion. That antelope will first run. And then if running doesn't work, maybe the antelope will try to stand their ground. One of the last-ditch efforts for that antelope is going to be freeze mode. Freeze mode is when our bodies and our nervous system thinks there is nothing else I can do to escape death in this moment, except freeze and dissociate from my body. So this is how deep the freeze response is. It is the last response that we have to protect ourselves. And so having some compassion for yourself around freeze response is really important. Your nervous system is responding to this perceived threat or this overwhelm by going to the last possible place. Like, that's how big it feels to your body right now. And it's hard when you're in freeze state. If part of your psyche is thinking this is akin to death, it's a pretty big deal to bridge out of that, right? To be present again when part of your body thinks I might be dying. And I just want to say too that this is a testament to the depth of sensitives, that we feel things so deeply, right? That is the place that we go. And so don't let this be a place of shame for yourself in any way, shape, or form. If you are going into freeze or overwhelm mode, this is just a sign that your nervous system needs support and needs even more gentle support in order to feel safe enough to come back out. So here's the great thing. There is a ton of things you can do at home before you even step foot out of the door to help yourself move out of overwhelm or freeze state. So the first question I would ask you, if you're someone who experiences overwhelm or freeze states, is, are you making your sanctuary spaces, like your home, true places of rest and energy conservation? So when you're home, are you doing what you need to do to block out the world? Or are you home or in whatever your safe space is and you're still scrolling on social media? You're still watching the news? This is really important because a lot of times we think that we are engaging in, shielding, in energy conservation practices just by being home or being in our rooms or being in our safe space. And yet there's still this onslaught of information that we're having to process. Are you having conversations with friends on the phone late at night or in the middle of your sacred time or simply on a day where you're just not ready, willing, able, or resourced to talk to somebody? These are all questions to ask yourself. In what ways can you make your havens, like your home, true safe havens? And the most important thing for sensitive people, especially those of us who are in states of overwhelm, is reducing sensory input. So of course, this is going to really look like reducing any kind of outside information like the news, like social media, like emails, like phone conversations or texts, all the things that require our attention and require our processing skills. And it can feel really hard to set up boundaries in that way, but I encourage you to at least look at it with curiosity and ask yourself, am I really creating enough of a safe haven in my space that I then have the even chance to resource enough to go back out into the world? You might also want to think about your literal sensory environment. Do you have soft enough sheets to lay on? Are you closing down bright lights at night? Maybe you even need to close the blinds during the day to have a little bit more of darkness and less visual input during the day. These are all just things to ask yourself. And of course, there's things that are out of your control. If you're a parent like me, then there's going to be times where your house is just loud. You can't control that. But what you could control is the ability to put earplugs in, or maybe even having, if your kid is old enough, designated quiet times where you are not trying to get stuff done during that quiet time, but you're actually giving yourself time to refill. So this is the first thing I would mention is take an inventory of your safe haven time and space and ask yourself, are there other layers that I could be putting in place where I really am more buffeted, protected, and held so that I can truly decompress when I'm in those spaces? The next tactic is to think about this idea of titration. So taking things in small little doses, small little steps. If something is overwhelming you, like the idea of stepping out into the world, in what way can you take an even smaller step? So maybe it feels really overwhelming to get in your car and drive to go meet a friend at the movies, but does it feel overwhelming to step onto your porch? How about we start there? Just step onto the porch and see how that feels. Have that be your goal for maybe 15 minutes this morning. Titration is a way in which we get our nervous system feeling on board, feeling safe, feeling ready for more energy and more bigness. And when you are a sensitive person, titration is the thing that is going to open you back up to the depths that you're capable of. So you're capable of so much as a sensitive person. And yet when we're in overwhelm, that's a sign that there's just too much actually coming at us. There's too much we've been trying to process. And so lessening the amount of too much by titrating whatever it is that we're going to do. Like, what's the smallest possible step you could make towards this thing that you want to do that feels overwhelming? Try to make it as small as possible and don't do anything else than that tiny little small step. And this will give your nervous system, like working out, the capacity to get stronger and have more capacity for what it is you want to do. Now, if even like the teeniest little step to you sounds scary, then here's a really amazing thing you can do from the comfort of your own home is imagine it. So our brains don't really know the difference between what we're imagining and what is actually happening. So if you are having feelings of stress or overwhelm come up around something that you really want to do in your life, but something that feels too big, too overwhelming, or like the moment you step out into it, you start freezing. Use your imagination. You have a very vivid imagination as a sensitive person. Use your imagination to imagine yourself doing that thing. Maybe even imagine yourself taking the teeniest little step and imagine it going really well. Like imagine you feeling really open and expanded and peaceful in your system, maybe having something happen that is just like serendipitous and magical the moment that you do it. So the more you imagine that, the more you're preparing your brain and your nervous system to actually feel okay when you do that thing. And if you want to go even deeper with this, you can add in somatic tracking. So somatic tracking is a practice, it's a technique where you are turning your awareness into your body and you are just becoming aware of whatever it is that you're feeling with a lack of judgment. So in somatic tracking, you're often asked to gaze inwards, notice what you're feeling, where you're feeling it, and to use descriptive words that describe its texture, its temperature, its location. So we're not looking for in somatic tracking words like happy or sad. We're looking for furry or smooth, big, small, circling, stagnant, really descriptive, tactile kind of words. So you can do somatic tracking when you're visualizing something, especially if you visualize something and you do have those feelings of anxiety come up, turn your awareness in. Where do you feel this anxiety or stress? What's its temperature? What's its texture? What's its girth or width? Is it small? Is it big? You can use this when you're visualizing something, or you can use it when you actually take that step and you go into the world, or you take that first little step towards the thing that overwhelms you. And what's really cool about somatic tracking is you're actually not trying to accomplish anything with it. There's not an end goal. There's not something you're striding towards. You're not even trying to change the feeling. You're just tuning in and noticing. And what's really cool and witchy about somatic tracking is that what it's doing is it's helping to retrain your brain to see that what you're experiencing isn't dangerous. So that even if you do have anxiety or overwhelm come up, You start to notice it in your body, you locate it, you describe it, and it's this really amazing thing where when we stop having anxiety or stress around what we're experiencing, the experience itself starts to shift. So your only goal here with somatic tracking is to turn your awareness inward without judgment and without story and notice. And it's very cool how the more you notice, the more it will shift. And here's the thing about sensitive people is we tend to be pretty darn smart. And so we think we can just rationalize our way out of this situation. If we just think about it long enough, deep enough, hard enough, we'll figure it out. The problem is that the issue isn't with our ability to perceive or think. The issue's in our bodies and our nervous systems and the way in which we don't feel safe. And so the more we just turn that same brilliance to our own body, tracking our sensations, just becoming aware of them, the more those sensations will just start to shift. And your whole feeling around taking that next step will start to shift too. And the very last tool I want to mention as you are moving out of freeze state or moving out of overwhelm is something that might feel a little funny to you, but actually really works incredibly well. And that is to mobilize in a safe place. So freeze comes up in our nervous system when we think there's no possible way I can fight or flight my way out of this anymore. And so how do we come out of a freeze? Well, one of those ways is to mobilize, is literally to move our bodies. So this could look like putting on a song and dancing in the comfort of your own home. Maybe you like full body shaking, so really shaking out your arms, your hands, your legs, your hips. Another thing you could do is literally imagine how you would want to move in that scenario. So in this case, how you might want to move when you leave your house and walk out of the door. And imagine this in your mind and then literally walk like you would want to walk in your house, in a place where you feel completely safe. I have used this a lot, especially when I felt like in an interaction with someone, I went into a freeze response and that was really hard for me to process later, or I had shame around it. There was a million things I wish I had done or wish I had said. I will literally reenact it, normally in a safe space, either in my home or when I'm in a safe place in nature, and I'll move my body the way I wanted to move, or maybe in a way that I never could conceive of myself moving or don't think I would ever do, but would have wanted to, like to punch someone or to push someone. And so this can be really cathartic and it can be really helpful to move your body out of the freeze state in a place where you feel really safe and really held. And with this, I want to give a really hardcore shout out in this moment to all of the therapists out there, especially the somatic therapists who are doing this work with their clients. And if this is something that you want to explore more, if you're like, okay, this is all really resonating and I want to be like really held while I do it, definitely go find yourself a therapist who practices somatic experiencing or some sort of somatic way of relating or being in therapeutics. I have found through the many years that I've been in therapy and have worked in therapeutic settings that this somatic layer is so important for sensitive people. And it can take some time to actually get in touch with, to get to the bottom of, to feel safe enough to connect with. But having someone there who's specialized in this can really, really help you to drop in, feel safe, start mobilizing, and get yourself out of freeze and overwhelm. The third question that came in is one that I think a lot of sensitives ask themselves out there. I know it's something I think about a lot, and so I think this might resonate with a lot of you. And this is the question: how do I discern between my feelings and somebody else's feelings? As sensitives, we will feel other people's feelings. We literally have more mirror neurons in our brain, neurons that are responsible for our ability to understand and empathize with other people. We have more of these mirror neurons in our brain than somebody who isn't sensitive has. And so you are more susceptible to, sensitive to other people's feelings. This is just a fact of life. You are going to notice that. You're going to feel that more than other people. When this question comes up for me, however, I often notice that it's because I'm in an under-resourced place to begin with. So if I am going down that path of asking, is this mine? Is it not? It's probably because I'm not already full of my own resources and being in that moment. And so if that's the case, if you're having this question come up for you hardcore, I want you to ask yourself, how could I resource myself more? What do I need in order to feel centered in myself, to feel resourced, to feel held? So let's take that awareness in as we examine some deeper levels in this question. Now, I do think there's ways to recognize on a somatic level if something is not, quote unquote, yours. And I think some of this comes with time and time spent tracking yourself and understanding your own body. So I have certain signals in my own body that to me signal like something invasive, something coming from the outside. So these signals will come in when I get sick with something. I first started noticing these specific signals when I contracted Lyme disease, but I'll also notice it come up now if I'm picking up energies that are not necessarily mine and that don't really have any business being inside my body. So some of those signals for me will be that my heart often feels like it's racing. I'll feel like the tightness of my pericardium around my heart. I often will get sort of sweaty hands and feet, and they'll get a little bit cold, like my temperature will drop. Another sign of invasion for me is often that I have a lot of meta feelings. Meta feelings are feelings about my feelings. So if I'm feeling really stressed and then I have a lot of stress about that stress, I might want to examine, is this mine or am I picking up someone else's stress? Or if I'm feeling anger and I'm feeling a lot of overwhelm about that anger or a lot of sadness about that anger, this is another thing to examine. So this is just one little example. You can definitely have meta feelings about your feelings and have them be your feelings. But this could also be something that could orient you to, do I need to unpack this in a huge way or is this somebody else's? So these are some things that I notice for myself, but everybody's going to be really different with their own signs of otherness, like tracking otherness. And I mention this at the same time that I really want to say that your ability to recognize like what is you and what is not you is important. But at the end of the day, we live in a world in which everything is in relationship all the time. So, we don't ask ourselves, where did this joy come from? Like say you're outside on a beautiful spring day on a hillside covered with cherry blossoms. You're not asking yourself, where did this joy come from? We really only ask ourselves that question when it's hard feelings. But we are beings in constant relationship with the world around us. On the level of quantum physics, we're constantly exchanging energy fields. This question of what is mine and what is yours is actually really hard to answer. The smaller and smaller you get, the deeper you look into reality. And so there's this level in which we will always be picking up on other people's experiences, other people's feelings. We're going to pick up on the feelings of a tree. We're going to touch into the mood of a landscape. What becomes more important here is what happens next. And yes, it's true that as a sensitive person, you will feel this more than perhaps other people will, that you will be more open to picking up on feelings and sensations in the environment around you. But what happens then? It's what we do with it, actually, that's much more important. So what you're feeling might have been somebody else's, but if you are feeling it now inside of yourself, it's now your feeling. And this doesn't mean that you need to go through any huge process here of like reckoning or accountability. It's just that now it's a feeling that exists inside your body. And so you have the ability to process and release that feeling. When we constantly ask ourselves, is this mine or someone else's? What's often happening there is that we're resisting what we're feeling. And it's not an invalid question to ask. Like, it's helpful sometimes to really be aware of, wow, actually, I don't think that was mine. I do think that was someone else's. But the fact remains that now that feeling is inside of you. Now that feeling does exist in your system. And what do you do about that? So instead of continuing to ask, how do I get rid of this because it's not mine? Ask yourself, how can I feel it and transform it? Because I don't need to hold it. And this is how you do this. You just feel what you're feeling. Identify it. Maybe find a word for it. Sometimes it can feel complex, and that complexity itself can feel overwhelming and like we want to push it away. So, really take a deep belly breath and ask yourself, what is this that I'm feeling? Drop into somatic tracking. Where are you feeling it in your body? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What is its temperature? How big or how small is it? When we turn our attention then to what we're feeling, because this feeling now exists inside of us, regardless of where it came from, we then can watch it transform. And what I found is that when it's not mine, often it will transform much quicker. I will breathe into it. I will feel into it. I'll track it. I'll ask for a guide to come in and help me transform it. I'll visualize it transforming inside of my body. And when I do that, then it just dissolves. And this is the cool thing about this, right? Not only are you then transforming the feeling that's inside of your body, but you're like metabolizing a piece of pollen that came in on the wind and then just like letting it go. And so not only are you doing this work for yourself, you're doing this work for the collective too. And it's pretty cool. And I promise you that it will transform so much faster this way than if you keep resisting it by asking yourself, is this someone else's or is this mine? Drop the question as much as you can, feel what you're feeling, and watch it transform. This fourth question is one that is so dear to my heart because it's such a real part of the reality of being a sensitive person. And so here is this question that a lot of different people asked in different iterations. And it's this: why, as a sensitive, can relationships feel so hard or draining? This is one of these paradoxes of being a sensitive person, that we're both like incredibly good at relationships. And it's also like our Achilles heel. The thing that feels the hardest are relationships. And there's reasons for this. So when I polled the sensitives in my audience and asked them about a year ago, what was one of the most challenging things about being a sensitive, this relationship with the other was the number one most challenging thing that came up for people. As sensitives, we are constantly tracking our environment, which means we're constantly tracking the person that we're with, their energy, their mood, their feelings, what they're going through. This is beautiful, right? This means that we can be really attuned friends and partners and lovers, but it can also be really draining and exhausting. Because of this, as sensitives, we have the tendency to over-attune to others and under-attune to our own selves. So we are constantly tracking and taking in all this sensory detail about the person that we're with, the relationship that's unfolding here, in a way where we come up and out of our own selves, and we're not attuning to or tracking our own selves anymore. This is tiring. If we're not connected to or tuned to our own self, we're not sitting at the seat of our power. We're not sitting with and enjoying our own energy. We're constantly turning the attention outwards. And if you have the attention outwards for too long, it can start to drain your batteries. So even when you have a relationship with someone that you absolutely adore and love, this can still come up, that the relationship can feel draining or exhausting or like it's taking a lot out of you and like you need time to retreat and take care of yourself. I remember I used to think to myself that I was really good at relationships, and I realized that I thought I was good at relationships because people in relationships with me tended to be happy about being in a relationship with me, that I was, a really good friend. I really showed up for people, that I was a really good lover or a really good partner. But at some point I realized that I actually wasn't good at relationships because while I was really good at making that other person feel good, I wasn't so good at taking care of myself and making sure that I felt good inside of the relationship. And this is so common for sensitive people. We become hyper-focused on making sure somebody else feels good that we don't even pay attention to whether or not we feel good in this situation, whether or not we feel good with that decision or inside of this relationship. And so one thing that can be really helpful to have relationships be less draining is to learn how to turn your tracker. So you're not just tracking that other person. One of the things that I found to be really helpful for sensitive people is to learn how to track in the real world, in the living world, in the natural world. I think this is a big reason why sensitive people get really excited about things like birding or plant identification or literal tracking, is because it uses our ability to be attuned to subtlety, and it focuses it outwards. It focuses it on the environment around us, on nature, in this place where our nervous system is naturally regulated and at ease. We have this ability as sensitive people. So I encourage you to have other things that you're tracking besides just the humans in your life. This will be really helpful for you, really regulatory. And of course, to learn how to track your own self. The more you learn how to track yourself, the more you can be responsive to when your body and when your system is saying, this is too much for me, or I need a break. And it might feel hard at first to express that. The more you practice attuning to yourself and being able to express your boundaries, wants, needs, and desires from that place, the easier it becomes and the richer your relationships will become. Of course, within the recognition of relationships being draining, we do need to ask ourselves, like, is this the right relationship for me? Is this configuration the right configuration? Is this person the right person? All those questions are super valid, and they're all things that are important for you to look at. And the more you learn how to turn your tracker inwards, to really acknowledge your own energy system, your own needs and desires, the easier and easier it will be to answer those questions and to start really cultivating relationships in your life that fulfill you. And the last question. This question is so dear to my heart. It's so important. It's so real. And this question goes like this. I feel so amazing, so centered, everything's flowing really well, and then it seems to shift. And then it's like, I have this terrible day, I have this bad day, and it all goes to pot. How do I stay centered and connected in an inherently chaotic world? I feel this so strongly. It's so real, right? You can have these amazing days where you're like, oh, I've really figured some stuff out now. Like, this is where I'm going to stay. I'm not going to leave this place. I know myself. I know what I need. Here you go. And then you wake up one morning and it's like the storm clouds have rolled in and your mind immediately goes to, what did I do wrong? Why is this happening again? How do I get back to where I was? The first thing I want to say here is just to let go of the anxiety around this feeling of disconnection. The feeling of disconnection, discombobulation, depression, that's hard enough, right? But at least let go of some of the stress and pressure you're holding for yourself around, I need to get back to that centered place. Here's the reality. Life has many textures. Life is going to have hard days where you feel disconnected. You didn't do anything wrong. You did nothing wrong. In reality, in fact, you're just here living your life. And this is part of the experience of being alive. Every time we go through moments of being disconnected or feeling off center, this is part of us gathering information about what we need, about how to release, about how to be here and be human. Circling back to this idea of meta feelings, as much as you can, let go of the meta feelings about your feelings. Like, if you're sad, you don't have to feel sad about being sad. Just feel sad. If you're worried, don't feel worried about being worried. You're just worried. Feel the feelings in their primary state. Let go, if you can, in any way, shape, or form, the meta feelings about it. These meta feelings that for sensitives so often lead us back to shame. Shame of like, I thought I had it all figured out. I gave so-and-so advice the other day, and now here I am. What? I'm back in this place. Who am I to be going about this world thinking I have anything figured out? Like, I feel so bad about myself and the fact that I'm back here in this place. Your whole goal during these moments of time when you do feel disconnected is to let go of that shame. To know that this is part of the human journey. This is part of what you signed up for. Absolutely nobody on this planet is going to feel connected every single day unless they're an ascended master, and those are very few and far between. So when you have off days, just say to yourself, this is part of the human journey. This is part of the human experience. I'm supposed to be experiencing this too. And in fact, When I get through this, the other side will be that much richer. My ability to connect to myself, to connect to my guides, to connect to this wider wisdom will be even richer for having said yes to just being on the human journey. And while you're in this state, to ask yourself, what do you need in order to come home? Like, what are the things that help you feel cozy, held, and resourced? And we're not looking for these things to completely solve or take away the pain. We're just looking for them to give us a solid foundation so that we can get through this time. So what are those things for you? What are the things that help you feel really resourced in life? And what are the ways in which you could work those into your day while you're moving through this time? And yes, there are ways to be more centered more of the time. Absolutely. This is what expanding our capacity is about. This is exactly why I'm teaching Earth Angel School, so that your center of gravity expands that much more. Because that's really what it is, right? When we come home to ourselves, when we understand ourselves, when we know how to be our authentic selves, when we understand our gifts, when we're connected to the source that is here to animate us, here to support us, the center of ourselves, this gravity of ourselves gets wider, gets bigger. And so less and less can knock us off our center. We're still human. Things still will. But the more you can build out this center of who you are, by understanding and attuning to your own self and your own divine abilities, the more the center of self is going to expand and the less easy it will be for you to topple over. At the end of the day, us sensitives, us earth angels, we came here to this planet because we have a special interest in humanity, because we're fascinated by the human journey. We want to experience all the layers. Earth angels are here for it. They know how to meet it. They know how to be with it. And earth angels see everything as an opportunity to grow. Everything, even this hard time, is an opportunity for you to connect more deeply with your soul, for you to grow. So if you are getting to the end of these questions and you're saying, yes, all of this is for me, I am not just a sensitive, I am an earth angel. I'm really ready to understand who I am, why I'm here to work with the magic of my nervous system, to really step into the potential that I have in this lifetime, to expand my center so I can walk into this world with not only the knowledge of my gifts, but the gravity and the self-assurance to really make them possible. Then I would love to see you in Earth Angel School. The early bird pricing for that ends on Monday, April 14th. So if you're interested, definitely check that out before that ends. We start on April 23rd. And if you're listening to this and you're like, tell me more about Earth Angels, tell me more so that I know that even though I'm a sensitive, I am also an earth angel, then definitely stay tuned for next week's podcast episode, because in that episode, I'm going to talk all about entering your earth angel era, a guide for all my fellow sensitives out there for you to step into your earth angel era and what that actually means for your ability to be in your power, to have clarity, and to come home to yourself. So thank you so much for being here. And as you explore your sensitivity, the uniqueness of the things that make you you, may it bring you even closer to the most important thing of all, remembering why you're here.